They dared her to sing as a joke, but when she opened her mouth, the room went dead silent. Some moments sneak up on you. You're just trying to survive the day, and then suddenly everything changes. That's what happened to Jania Brooks on a cold Tuesday morning in March, right before third period. She had no clue her life was about to shift in front of everyone. Westridge Middle, tucked on the edge of Springfield, Missouri, wasn't known for kindness. It had its share of cliques, whispered rumors in the hallways, and teachers too tired to break up every smart remark. For kids like Jania, quiet, poor, and different, it was survival of the most invisible. She walked those halls every day like a shadow. Faded jeans, secondhand hoodie, old sneakers that looked like they'd seen 3 owners before her. People didn't really talk to Jania, not unless it was to borrow a pencil or toss a joke her way. Most of the time, she kept her eyes down, earphones in, even when there was no music playing. But that day, things went sideways in the cafeteria. "Yo, Jania!" She looked up, already tense. It was Connor. Golden boy smile, hair gelled just enough, football jacket slung over his shoulder like he owned the air around him. He was the kind of kid who cruised through school on charm and loudness. People laughed at whatever he said, even when it wasn't funny. Jania hesitated. "You gonna try out for the talent show?" he asked, smirking. Some of his friends snickered. Macy, with her high ponytail and too loud laugh, leaned in. "Yeah, sing us something, Jania. Come on, don't be shy." The joke hit like a slap. They weren't curious. They were mocking her. Everyone knew the auditions were that afternoon, and everyone knew Jania had never performed anything in front of anyone. She blinked, clutching her lunch tray, standing still like a deer in headlights. "You sing at church, right?" Connor pressed, smiling like he already knew what she was going to say. "I mean, maybe you don't even know what a real mic feels like." The laughter spread. A few heads turned. Even the lunch monitor looked over, but said nothing. Jania's throat felt tight, but she didn't cry, not in front of them. She turned and started to walk away. Then someone shouted, "Bet she won't show up to the auditions." Another voice added, "I'll bring popcorn if she does." She could feel their eyes burning into her back as she walked to the far end of the cafeteria, sliding into her usual corner seat. Alone. But that's when something strange started brewing in her chest. Not anger, not sadness, not shame. It was something quieter, but stronger. Her grandma always said, "Sometimes, baby, life gon' push you right where you need to be, even if it's with both hands on your back." That night, Jania didn't eat much. Her appetite was buried beneath thoughts she didn't have words for. She sat in her room, staring at the chipped paint on the walls, her old MP3 player in her lap, one song on repeat. Then, almost without realizing it, she whispered to herself, "I'm going." She wasn't sure if it was pride or just spite, but she meant it. She was going to sing, but none of them knew what was coming next. Jania's neighborhood sat behind the old train station on the east side of Springfield. You could smell oil and rust in the air if the wind blew the wrong way. Her apartment building looked like it hadn't been painted since the 90s, with crooked mailboxes and cracked sidewalks that nobody ever fixed. But inside apartment 2B, it felt like another world. Her grandma, Miss Edna, had raised her since she was 5. No frills, no nonsense. Just love, grit, and gospel music playing from a dusty radio in the kitchen. "You don't need much," Grandma would say, pouring cornbread batter into a pan with worn hands. "Just heart, and yours got plenty." Jania didn't talk much, but when she sang, it was like another person took over. Every Sunday morning, she'd sing along with her grandma while washing dishes or folding laundry. No fancy riffs, no training, just her voice, pure, raw, and filled with something deeper than notes, like truth. "Sing it again," her grandma would say, eyes closed, rocking side to side as Jania's voice filled the little kitchen. "Let it out, baby." But nobody else knew about that voice, not her classmates, not even her teachers. School was a different kind of world, one where being seen could get you laughed at. And Jania had learned a long time ago that silence was safer. That evening, after the cafeteria prank, Miss Edna was stirring beans on the stove when Jania quietly said, "I think I'm going to try out for the talent show tomorrow." Her grandma paused, wooden spoon midair. "You are?" Jania nodded. "They dared me to." Miss Edna raised an eyebrow. Was it a real dare or a fool's kind of dare? Jania looked down. The second one. Silence. Then Miss Edna wiped her hands on her apron and walked over. She placed one hand gently on Jania's cheek and tilted her face up. You do this. You do it for you, not to prove nothing to them. I know, Miss Edna smiled. What you gonna sing? Jania thought for a moment. Maybe His Eye is on the Sparrow. Her grandma's smile widened. That's your song, baby. And it was. Every note of it lived in her bones. They practiced that night in the kitchen, like they always had. No stage, no lights, just a wooden spoon for a mic and a floor that creaked beneath their feet. Miss Edna closed her eyes as Jania sang the first line, soft and unsure. By the second verse, it was pouring out of her like rain through an open window. Sing like they ain't even there, her grandma whispered, like it's just you and the good Lord. She did. By the time she finished, Miss Edna had tears in her eyes. You ready now? She said. Jania didn't feel ready. She felt scared, but she nodded anyway. Because sometimes fear is just proof that what you're about to do actually matters. By the time the school bell rang the next morning, Jania was already regretting it. She'd barely slept. Her stomach felt like a tight knot, and every step through the hallways of Westridge felt louder than usual. Lockers slammed like cymbals. Laughter sounded sharper. She could feel eyes on her, even when nobody was looking. But she was there. She showed up. That was more than most people expected of her. During homeroom, Connor walked past her desk. He didn't say anything, just smirked and kept walking. That smile said everything. He thought this was still funny. So did Macy. She was in Jania's science class and made sure to whisper to her friend loud enough for Jania to hear. She's really gonna sing. This is gonna be gold. Jania didn't respond. She just stared at her notebook, gripping her pencil so hard the lead snapped. By lunchtime, the whispers had grown. She caught snippets all around her. She said she's doing that old church song. Wait, like actually singing? I heard Connor dared her, and she's going through with it. Girl must be desperate for attention. She sat in the same corner she always did, back of the cafeteria, tray untouched, headphones on. But no music. She was listening, trying to quiet the storm in her chest. Her music teacher, Mr. Kinsey, approached her table just before the bell. He was a quiet man with thinning hair and a soft voice. Always wore the same brown loafers and smelled like coffee. Hey, Jania, he said gently. I saw your name on the audition list. She nodded, barely looking up. He hesitated. I just wanted to say, I'm glad you signed up. She looked at him, unsure if he was being serious. He smiled. I've never heard you sing, but I've seen the way you listen in class. You hear things most kids don't. Jania didn't know what to say to that, so she said nothing. Break a leg, he said, before walking away. By the time the final bell rang, she thought about backing out at least 20 times, just slipping out the side door and disappearing. Nobody would miss her. But her feet kept walking toward the auditorium anyway. The hallway was already buzzing. Students gathered near the double doors, the kind of energy people bring to a school dance or a fight behind the gym. It wasn't support, it was curiosity. People wanted to see a show, and they were expecting a disaster. Inside, the auditorium was half full. Kids sat slouched in their seats, chewing gum, scrolling their phones. Teachers leaned against walls with clipboards and lukewarm coffee. On stage, a beat-up microphone stood under a flickering spotlight. The tryouts had started. One boy juggled tennis balls. A girl did a short hip-hop routine. A group of 8th graders did a lip-sync to an old boy band song. Then came the moment. Next up, called out a bored student assistant from backstage, Jania Brooks. A few chuckles rolled through the crowd. Jania stood slowly. She could feel her heart pounding in her ears. Her hands shook as she climbed the 3 steps up to the stage. The spotlight hit her like heat. The mic stood tall, taller than her, it felt like. She reached for it with one hand. Someone in the back whispered just loud enough, "Here we go." She took a deep breath. Her hoodie sleeves were too long. Her sneakers squeaked slightly on the stage floor. She looked out at the crowd, but didn't see faces, just shapes, blurs. She looked down, then closed her eyes, and let the silence stretch. Long enough that people started shifting in their seats, coughing, waiting for her to flinch or run. But Jania wasn't going anywhere. She just needed one more breath. And when it came, everything else fell away. For a moment, it was so quiet you could hear someone's phone buzz in the fifth row. Jenia kept her eyes closed. Her fingers tightened around the mic, just enough to ground herself. She thought of her grandma's kitchen, the way the tile floor always stayed cold, the hum of the old radio, the way Miss Edna would sway slowly when she cooked, singing softly like the lyrics were stitched into her bones. And suddenly, the auditorium didn't feel so big. She took another breath, then let it out as the first note left her mouth. I sing because I'm happy. The sound was barely a whisper, but it floated, clear, fragile, real. People in the back stopped whispering, phones lowered. The energy in the room shifted like a gust of wind had swept through. I sing because I'm free. The second line had more strength, a tremble in it, but not from fear, from something else, conviction. She didn't try to sound like anybody else, didn't throw in fancy vocal tricks or fake power. It wasn't perfect, but it was hers, and it hit different. A teacher up front slowly turned her head. Mr. Kinsey stood near the wall, arms crossed, mouth parted just slightly. By the time Jenia reached the chorus, you could feel it in the walls. His eye is on the sparrow. Her voice cracked just a little on the word sparrow, but that crack made it real. It held pain. It held history. It held every moment someone had looked at her and laughed. Every lunch alone. Every time her grandma said, keep your chin up, baby. You're more than what they see. And I know he watches me. The final word fell like a stone in water, rippling through rows of students who, just minutes before, had been waiting to laugh. Now, nobody moved. Even Connor, sitting near the middle aisle with his arms folded, was frozen. His smirk was gone. Macy's gum had stopped moving in her mouth. She blinked twice, then looked away. Jenia stood still. She didn't bow, didn't smile. She just looked up, eyes meeting the audience for the first time. Her hands no longer shaking. And then she walked off the stage. No music played, no polite clapping, just that strange, loaded silence that settles in when people are witnessing something they weren't ready for. She didn't wait around. She slipped out the side door before the next act was even called. The cold air outside slapped her cheeks as soon as she stepped into the late afternoon sun. And for the first time in a long time, Jenia smiled. Not because she'd impressed anyone, but because she did what they never thought she could. And deep down, she knew they'd never see her the same way again. By the time Jenia got home that evening, the house smelled like fried cabbage and sweet potatoes. Miss Edna was in her usual spot at the stove, humming softly. She turned when Jenia came in. Well? She asked, without needing to say more. Jenia dropped her backpack on the floor. Her face said it all. Miss Edna raised one eyebrow, a smile playing at her lips. You didn't run? No, ma'am. You sang? Jenia nodded. And? She shrugged. They listened. That's all she said, but that was enough. Miss Edna walked over and wrapped her arms around her granddaughter's shoulders, holding her close for a quiet moment. You did good, baby, she whispered. Proud of you. That night, Jenia slept harder than she had in weeks. The next day at school felt different. Not dramatically, not like in the movies where the shy girl walks in and everyone claps or clears a seat at the cool table. But there was a shift. People looked at her, really looked at her, not in mockery, not out of curiosity, just recognition. She walked down the hallway, and a seventh grader she didn't know gave her a thumbs up. In history class, her teacher smiled and said, Heard about the performance yesterday, must have been something. Even Macy, who hadn't said a word to Jenia in months, muttered, You can actually sing. Jenia didn't respond, just kept walking. Connor stayed quiet. He didn't tease her, didn't smile that smug smile. If anything, he avoided her eyes now, and that, honestly, felt better than anything he could have said. After lunch, Mr. Kinsey pulled her aside in the music hallway. You were brave yesterday, he said. That wasn't an easy room. Jenia nodded. You ever think about joining the school choir? He asked. She hesitated. I don't know. Well, he said, I think you've got something special. Doesn't matter if you sing in front of 5 people or 500. When it's real, it reaches people. She looked down, then back up at him. Maybe. He smiled. You've got time. It wasn't some grand offer, no trophies, no instant fame. But it was the first time someone at school had seen her for more than what she wore or where she lived. That afternoon, she sat alone on the steps outside the school, letting the sun hit her face. For the first time, she wasn't trying to disappear. She was just being still. She thought about what had happened. It had started as a joke, a setup, a dare meant to embarrass her. But they didn't expect her to be ready. She hadn't even expected it herself. But sometimes the best moments come when you stop trying to survive and finally decide to show who you really are. Over the next few weeks, things didn't explode for Jania. They unfolded slowly, like the sun rising after a stormy night. She wasn't suddenly the most popular girl in school. She didn't get a flood of compliments or a standing ovation in the halls, but she wasn't invisible anymore. Her name had weight. In English class, when she raised her hand to answer a question, people listened. Nobody snickered. Nobody rolled their eyes. She walked into the cafeteria and people actually moved over, not out of fear, but because they knew who she was now, knew what she could do. A few kids even started sitting near her, not to be her best friends, but just close enough to say, "Hey," or "That song you sang, my mom plays that at church." The weirdest part? Connor didn't speak to her at all. He'd glance her way sometimes, but never with that grin anymore. Not even with regret. Just something like confusion, like he still didn't quite understand how someone he thought was nobody had turned out to be somebody. One afternoon, Macy passed her in the hall, slowed down and said, "You sang better than I expected." It wasn't a compliment, but it also wasn't a joke. Jania just nodded. Thanks. She didn't need more than that. Back at home, Miss Edna was telling everyone at the church. She sang in front of the whole school, "Lord as my witness," had them all quiet like Sunday morning. Jania would blush and duck her head when her grandma talked like that, but part of her liked it. It felt good to be known for something other than being the girl with the cheap shoes, or that kid from the east side. One Friday, Mr. Kinsey pulled her aside again. "We've got the district vocal showcase coming up," he said. "I'd like you to be part of it. Just one song, nothing fancy." She stared at him. "Like, perform?" He nodded. "It's not a competition, just students from different schools sharing their voices." Her chest tightened. "I don't know." He gave her a minute, then said, "That thing you did in the auditorium, that wasn't just brave, that was art. You made people feel something." She bit the inside of her cheek, thinking, "Can I think about it?" He smiled. "You take your time, but I hope you say yes." Later that night, she sat in her room with the window cracked open. Streetlights buzzed outside. A car rolled by playing music too loud. She held her old MP3 player in one hand, just flipping through tracks. Her grandma knocked gently and peeked in. "You all right, baby?" Jania nodded. "Yeah, Mr. Kinsey asked if I'd sing again. At something." Miss Edna stepped in, arms folded. "You wanna?" "I don't know." Miss Edna sat on the edge of the bed. "Sometimes it's not about what you want. Sometimes it's about what somebody else might need to hear." Jania looked at her. "You know how many folks feel like they ain't got a voice?" Her grandma continued. "Feel like they ain't worth much 'cause nobody sees 'em?" Jania nodded slowly. "Well, you showed 'em. You stood there and sang like somebody who knew who she was, even if your knees were shaking. That matters." The room was quiet for a second. Then Jania whispered, "I think I want to do it." Miss Edna smiled. "Then you will. Because a voice like that don't just belong to you. It belongs to the ones who haven't found theirs yet." 1 year later, Jania stood behind the curtain of a small stage at the Springfield Civic Center. The chairs out front weren't packed, but there were enough faces to make her palms sweat. Parents, students from neighboring schools, teachers, and a few community folks sat quietly, waiting for the next student to be called. Her name was on the program this time, printed in bold letters, not as a joke, not as a dare, as a voice people came to hear. She could see her grandma sitting near the third row, purse in her lap, a proud smile already plastered across her face. Mr. Kinsey stood off to the side of the stage, arms crossed gently, giving her a little nod. It still made her nervous. The stage, the lights, the waiting, but it didn't scare her anymore. This time, Jania had chosen her song. No one else picked it. No one dared her. She picked it for herself and for the girl she used to be. The girl who kept her head down, who sat alone at lunch, who thought nobody ever saw her. She sang for her. She sang for every kid walking into school today, thinking they don't matter. She sang for the ones who were laughed at before they even opened their mouths. As she walked to the mic, she remembered that cafeteria day, the one that started it all. She remembered the laughter, the heat in her cheeks, Connor's voice, Macy's giggle. But more than that, she remembered the moment after the song, the silence, the stillness, the shift. It was small, but it was real. Now, as the first note left her lips, she didn't close her eyes. She looked out, saw faces, saw focus, and she held her own. The song wasn't perfect. It didn't have to be, but it was full of her life, her nights in the kitchen with her grandma, her fear, her hope, her voice. When she finished, the applause came gently, like a wave rolling in. No screaming, no wild cheers, just warmth. A few people stood up. Miss Edna did first, others followed. Jania stood there, not because she wanted attention, but because she finally understood something. Her voice wasn't just sound. It was a story. It was proof that people can grow out of silence. Later that evening, after the crowd had cleared and the stage lights dimmed, Jania stepped outside with her coat zipped up tight. The air was sharp, but it felt good. Mr. Kinsey joined her on the steps. "You did it," he said. She smiled. "Yeah. You ever think you'd be here a year ago? Not even close." He chuckled. "Funny how things change." She looked out at the parking lot where Miss Edna's car waited, engine running. "Some things don't," she said. "I still get nervous. That just means you care." She nodded, then asked, "You think there's more I can do with it? With your voice?" "Yeah." He looked at her, serious now. "Jania, there's no limit to what you can do. The real question is, do you believe that?" She didn't answer right away, but then she smiled. "I think I'm starting to." And that was enough, for now. As she walked to the car, Miss Edna rolled down the window. "You sounded like an angel, baby." Jania laughed softly, more like a tired one. Miss Edna grinned. "Even angels get tired. They still do what they came to do." Jania climbed in, closed the door, and sat back in the warmth. She stared out the window as they drove off, lights blurring by, city quiet, music low on the radio. The road ahead wasn't clear, but her voice? Her voice had finally found its place, and that's what matters. You never know what someone's capable of, especially when the world's only ever given them silence. Sometimes, all it takes is one chance, and the courage to take it. So here's the question. What are you still holding back? What would happen if you finally stepped into your own light? Don't wait to be picked. Don't wait to be dared. Use your voice now.